I once had the responsibility of watering my friend's plants while he was away with his wife. It was a Friday evening, and around 5 p.m., I visited the plants and noticed that the pots were still in the sun. So I decided to wait until they were in the shade before watering them. While I was tending to the plants, I couldn't help but notice how attractive my friend's wife Barbara was. She was slim and beautiful, and I couldn't help but think that my friend was lucky to be with her. However, I had heard rumors that Barbara had cheated on my friend with younger men. Whenever I saw her, she seemed to be flirting with me and making prolonged eye contact, which made me feel sexually aroused despite being over 50 years old. Barbara was still a very sexy woman, and I couldn't stop myself from wondering what was in her lingerie drawer. The thought had been gnawing at me for days, and I couldn't shake it off. I guess I had built up an image of Barbara being a bit of a cougar. I had heard stories of her wild nights out and her love for all things sensual, but I had never seen any evidence of it. I knew my friend's bedroom was in the loft, so I headed up there. My heart was pounding with excitement and anticipation as I searched for something to wear. It wasn't long before I had found a sexy pair of sheer-to-waist pantyhose, a little red sparkly sleeveless cocktail dress, some cute sling-back heels with peeped toes, and joy of joys, a pretty shoulder-length dark brown wig. I quickly stripped off the summer shorts and t-shirt I was wearing and slipped the pantyhose up my smooth legs. I felt the silky nylon encase me, hugging my skin and accentuating my curves. The sensation was exhilarating, and I couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. I put on one of Barbara's bras and padded it out to give me a more feminine silhouette. I then slipped on the red dress, feeling the soft fabric cling to my body. The dress was a perfect fit, and I couldn't help but admire myself in the mirror. I then put on the heels, feeling a sense of transformation as my figure was instantly changed. The heels fixed a different profile to my outline, and I could see the difference in my posture and walk. I couldn't believe my luck. I had found the perfect outfit to make me feel like a woman. I had always been curious about women's clothing, and now I finally had the chance to experience it for myself. I put on some makeup, carefully applying foundation, blush, and mascara to accentuate my features. I then positioned my hairdo, which I dislike calling a wig, but it is necessary for me to wear one. I styled it in a way that made me feel confident and beautiful. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I couldn't help but feel incredibly pleased with the way I looked. I felt like a whole new person. I then took selfie after selfie, capturing the moment and the way I felt. It was extra thrilling knowing I was wearing Barbara's things. I had borrowed some of her clothes and accessories, and I couldn't help but wonder if my friend might prefer how I looked in the outfit rather than Barbara. That led me to thinking about the possibility of being in a threesome with them, and I don't need to tell you what effect that had on a certain part of my body. So I felt compelled to pleasure myself accordingly. As always, the dressed-up episode had to come to an end. After an hour or so, I was putting Barbara's items away where I had found them. I carefully folded her clothes, but alas, I was lucky that he didn't catch me. As I watered the plants, my mind was still reeling from the experience I had just had. I couldn't stop thinking about how it felt to be dressed up as a woman and how it made me feel more alive than I had felt in years. It was as if I had finally found a way to express a part of myself that had been hidden away for far too long. As I drove home, I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever have the opportunity to do it again. The thrill of wearing women's clothing and the possibility of being caught had given me a rush that I couldn't shake off. I felt more alive than I had felt in years. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the possibility of being caught by Barbara's brother or my friend. I wondered what would happen if they found out that I had borrowed Barbara's clothes and dressed up as a woman. Would they be shocked, disgusted, or accepting of my desires? I didn't know that the idea of finding out excited me. Eventually, my friend returned from his trip, and I returned his key, never telling him about my experience with his wife's clothes. But the memory of that day has stayed with me ever since. It has made me more aware of my own desires and more willing to explore them. Looking back, I realized that what I did was wrong. I had invaded Barbara's privacy and used her belongings without her consent. But at the same time, it opened up a new world of possibilities for me. It helped me to understand myself better and to be more accepting of my own desires. In the end, I learned that sometimes it takes a daring move to discover who you truly are. And while I wouldn't recommend anyone else to do what I did, I'm grateful for the experience and the knowledge it has brought me. As I left the garden, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief that I had narrowly avoided being caught in the act. My heart was still pounding with excitement and anticipation, and I couldn't shake off the thrill of what had just happened. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the experience. I found myself daydreaming about what it would be like to wear women's clothing again and to experience that rush of excitement and thrill. I knew that I had to find a way to do it again, even if it meant risking getting caught. A few weeks later, my friend Tino asked me if I could water his plants again while he was away on a business trip. I eagerly agreed, knowing that I would have the perfect opportunity to dress up once again. This time, I made sure to bring my own clothes and makeup, so I wouldn't have to borrow Barbara's things. As soon as I arrived at the house, I headed straight up to the loft and began to dress up. I put on a black lace bra and matching panties, a pair of sheer black stockings, and a black satin slip. I then slipped on a tight-fitting red dress that hugged my curves in all the right places. I completed the look with a pair of black patent leather heels and some carefully applied makeup. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I couldn't help but feel incredibly turned on by the sight of myself in women's clothing. I felt so sexy and feminine, and the sensation of the silky fabric against my skin was indescribable. I spent the next few hours taking selfies and admiring myself in the mirror, reveling in the feeling of being a woman. But as always, the experience had to come to an end, and I carefully put away my clothes and makeup, making sure to leave everything exactly as I found it. As I left the house, I couldn't help but feel a sense of disappointment that the experience was over. But at the same time, I knew that I would do it again in a heartbeat, no matter how risky it might be. From that day on, I found myself drawn to the idea of cross-dressing more and more. I began to explore my feminine side in secret, experimenting with different outfits and makeup looks, and even venturing out into public dressed as a woman. It was a risky and sometimes dangerous lifestyle, but I couldn't help myself. The feeling of being a woman was just too powerful to resist, and even now, years later, I still find myself drawn to the thrill of cross-dressing and the rush of excitement that comes with it.